Hello, and welcome to Critical Weight Theory. This is a review that I've had on the back burner for a little while, and I'm glad to finally get around to it. Today I'm taking a trip down one of the strangest side roads in animation history, the 1961 Tales of the Wizard of Oz cartoon, specifically Season 1, Episode 3, titled Leapin Lion. And I actually did a review of the first two episodes of this series. It's got over 1 billion views. Just kidding, it barely has any views. But I don't care. I'm not really chasing popularity with this podcast. It's obvious. It's a rinky dink little podcast, but I like to look at the weird odds and ends, the eccentric topics that very few other people are going to be covering. And if you've never heard of this series, don't worry, you're definitely not alone. Despite being connected to one of America's most beloved stories, Tales of the Wizard of Oz has become surprisingly obscure. The episodes were incredibly short, only about 4 minutes and 40 seconds each, and over the course of a single season, the studio produced roughly 110 of these. They weren't meant to tell epic adventures, especially not in a single episode. Instead, they were quick comedic vignettes. I've mangled the word vignettes there, but anyway, they were quick comedic vignettes featuring Dorothy, Toto, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Cowardly Lion, and yes, the Wizard. Although based on L. Frank Baum's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, a work that the Library of Congress has called, uh, you know, one of the greatest and best loved homegrown fairy tales, this version took plenty of liberties. The Scarecrow became Socrates, the Tin Man was renamed Rusty, and the Cowardly Lion was called Dandy, like Dandelion. Get it? And it gives him a more refined, almost intellectual personality. Just kidding. It's he's a goofball. None of these characters come across as particularly bright, and it makes them cute. Really, these silly names, and uh, watching Leapin Lion today feels a little like stepping into a dream or maybe a fever dream. The episode opens with Dandy the Cowardly Lion and Toto being startled by the Munchkins, and of course, Dorothy is there as well. And these aren't the cheerful little people many audiences remember from the 1939 MGM film. Instead, they're not even seemingly human. They're like oddly shaped, exaggerated little creatures who chatter in voices that sound remarkably like a flock of turkeys gobbling away. And the gang eventually reaches the Emerald Castle, where the Wizard of Oz resides. In one of the episode's stranger moments, the wizard drinks a potion to make himself visible before attempting to help Dorothy return home. His solution, a magical transportation box that supposedly could send her back to Kansas. Naturally, it doesn't work, and just like that, the episode is over. I mean, that's really all there is. There really isn't that much of a story here. So it's an incredibly simple story, but really stands out today is the animation itself. I mean, for one thing, it's just that these characters, they're cute, they're lovable, um, and it almost doesn't even matter what story is involved. Especially if you have like a really little kid watching this, they're just going to be charmed by these characters, I think. And it doesn't matter that it's an older cartoon. I think a lot of kids would be uh, falling in love with these characters just because they're cute and silly and all that. And Dorothy is drawn with bright red hair, and in one memorable scene, she delivers dialogue without her mouth moving at all. So it's one of those glitchy moments that you get in some of these old cartoons. It's one of those production shortcuts that's hard to miss once you notice it. Of course, this was television animation in the early 1960s when studios were working with extremely tight budgets and possibly some borderline impossible production schedules, so limited animation was not unusual. But Tales of the Wizard of Oz sometimes pushes those limitations to amusing extremes, and you get some odd moments, And finding information about Leapin Lion isn't easy either. Even major databases like IMDb contain almost no plot information, and the Big Cartoon database simply lists the regular cast without offering much detail about the story itself. Many episodes remain difficult to find, and the series has never received a complete official DVD release. And historically, the show is much more important than its obscurity might suggest, and that's perhaps another interesting aspect of this little episode here. Tales of the Wizard of Oz was produced by Crowley Films in Ottawa for Videocraft International, the company that would soon rename itself Rankin Bass Animated Entertainment. Today, Rankin Bass is remembered for holiday classics like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. You ever hear of that one? I think a lot of us have probably seen that one as kids, and basically anytime Christmas comes around. But in 1961, the studio was still experimenting. This series marked their first major venture into traditional cell animation, from what I understand, anyway. And this was after becoming famous for their stop motion animagic productions, which I believe is what they call the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer techniques. And several people who worked on this series uh, would go on to create some of Rankin Bass's most beloved classics. Larry Romer, for example, later directed Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and I believe he was involved in this little show. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Again, the details are a little bit jumbled up when it comes to searching for these facts online. But if I remember correctly, when I gathered my notes, I think he was involved. F.R. Crowley would help direct the animated Return to Oz television special in 1964, while writer Romeo Muller became one of the studio's defining creative voices, even though IMDb does not list who wrote in this episode. So I don't actually know if Romeo Muller was involved. Um, it's possible he was, but again, I don't think they have the writers listed. So that's one of the dangers of trying to find information when it's not even available. you know, you might accidentally spread misinformation. So go ahead and correct me if any of those details are false. And in many ways, Tales of the Wizard of Oz served as a testing ground. The studio was exploring new animation techniques, refining its storytelling style, and building the creative team that would define Rankin Bass throughout the 1960s and beyond. And while Leapin Lion may never rank among the greatest animated shorts ever produced, in fact, I don't even know if such a list is available anywhere. Maybe some animation nerd has made up a list like that, but I kind of doubt this would find its way even in the top 100. But this is still a fascinating little time capsule between turkey sounding munchkins, disappearing wizards, malfunctioning magic boxes, and delightfully limited animation. It captures a unique moment when TV studios were learning how to bring fantasy to the small screen on some real shoestring budgets. And sometimes the forgotten corners of animation history are every bit as entertaining as the classics, not because they're perfect, but because they're wonderfully unapologetically strange. And I kind of like experimental stuff sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't work at all, and it ends up seeming like a complete waste of time. But I think this was cute enough to merit a mention here. Anyway, thanks for listening. I actually bit my tongue at one point while talking here, so if you're wondering why I messed up during a certain moment, that was actually it. Uh, So yeah, I'm not always the best speaker apparently because I actually bit my dang tongue. But anyway, I'll see you next time, and at a certain point, I'll uncover another overlooked gem from the history of animation. I also do episodes on movies, music, especially rock music, but sometimes classical. I've even done some rap music, and I talk about politics sometimes, which can be infuriating for some people who, well, a lot of people are going to disagree with my views, even people that I would assume might agree with me, or they're going to find something wrong with with what I've said. That's just the way the world works. And especially when you're wrong all the time, like I am. But anyway, let me know what you think. Feel free to like and subscribe if you like weird episodes like this. Again, I'm not doing this to be popular or well liked. I'm not really a popular dude. But anyway, have a good one.